All right, guys. So yesterday we read about our family tree, and today we're going to read a book called Fancy Nancy, My Family History. So it does have something to do with family trees. Today, your goal after I read this book is to tell how this book is different than yesterday's book. Fancy Nancy, My Family History, and the author is Jane O'Connor. And the illustrations are by Robin Price Glasser and by Ted Enick. Do you know about your ancestors? They are people in your family who lived long ago. You say it like this, ancestors. Isn't that a great fancy word? We are writing ancestors reports in class. Bree is writing about her great-grandfather. He is 90. He was a war hero. Robert's great-grandmother is 100. She came to America on a ship. It almost sank. You are both lucky, I tell my friends. You know your ancestors. All of mine are deceased. That's fancy for dead. That night my grandpa calls. He is coming to visit soon. His parents are my great-grandparents, so I ask, were they famous? Did they have adventures? Grandpa says no. They were nice, ordinary people. Ordinary? That's like plain. I wish I had fancy ancestors. Later that night, Grandpa sends a photo of my great-grandfather. Grandpa's email says, my dad was kind and honest. He only lost his temper once. I broke a teapot and I blame my sister. My dad was not upset about the teapot. He was upset that I lied. Your dad sounds like a very lovely person, I reply. Reply is fancy for answer. I'm going to write my report about him. I gather facts from Grandpa. My ancestors had 5 children. He was a bank guard. He liked to fish. He lived to be 74. The next day I illustrate the cover. Illustrate is fancy for making a picture. Then I start writing my report. It begins, my great-grandpa was a bank guard. That does not sound exciting. And I love here how the author added the detail of putting the picture in there with all of the details within a picture. So I added something extra. Once he stopped a bunch of bank robbers. That sounds very exciting. But we got to ask kindergarten, is it the truth? Or is she just adding stuff in there? Next I write, my great-grandpa loved to fish. Then I add some more exciting stuff. One time he caught a shark. So again, is Fancy Nancy telling the truth? Should she tell the truth? Yes, she should. The next day, Clara and Yoko both read the reports. I do not mean to brag, but mine is way more interesting. After school, I tell my parents, on Friday, I get to read my report. My dad says, great, Grandpa is coming on Thursday. He can go to school with you. He is so proud that your report is about his dad. What's the problem that Fancy Nancy has right now, guys? If Grandpa comes to school and he hears a report, what is he going to find out? I forgot about Grandpa coming. All of a sudden, my tummy feels funny. I don't think he is allowed to come, I say. My mom looks at me. Of course he can come. Don't you want him to come? Upstairs, I show Mom my report. I want it to be interesting, so I exaggerated. Exaggerate is a fancy word for stretching the truth. Honey, Mom says, you didn't just exaggerate. You made stuff up. That's lying. I remember the story about the broken teapot. My ancestor would have been very upset with me. My grandpa will be too. By the time Grandpa comes, I have written a new report. This time I stick with the plain truth. I write about the teapot. It was an ordinary story, but I really like it. On Friday, Grandpa comes to school. He has brought his dad's top hat. It's a real one, not like the one in my magic set. My great-grandpa loved to get dressed up, I tell everyone. I must be fancy from him. All right, and then these are, at the end, they give you the words that she taught you today. So ancestors are people in your family who lived long ago. So remember, we said on a family tree, the higher up you go, the older the ancestors are. The word deceased means dead. The word exaggerate means to stretch the truth. Illustrate is make a picture, like the illustrator made these pictures with so much detail. The word ordinary means plain, and the word reply means answer. So yesterday I read you this book, and then today we read this book. They're both about ancestors and about family trees, but Mrs. Berg wants you to figure out how they're different and just talk about it. You do not need to write it down, but just tell people how are they different. So remember, this one was all about a little girl telling you a family tree, who's in her family tree, and how they're connected. And this one is more of a story, but still tells about ancestors. So just think of one thing or one reason these stories are different. And you could also think of one reason they're the same, okay? And talk to a family member about it. All right, the last thing you're going to do for today is start your family tree. So to make a tree, I made the trunk first, and I just made these 2 lines, okay? Now I'm going to make the top of the tree, and I want it to be rather large. The way I make a tree is I just make these little curved lines. See, just keep going. All right, I'm going to put down the phone for 1 second so I can finish drawing them. All right, and here's my family tree. So right here, I'm going to write the kids in my family.